Welcome to Stageworthy. I'm Phil Rickaby, the host and producer of this podcast. Stageworthy is Canada's theatre podcast. And on this show, I talk to theatre makers of all kinds, from actors to directors to playwrights and more, some of whom are household names and others I think you should really get to know. As always, stay to the end of the episode to hear about next week's guest. But for right now, let's get ready to talk about my guest, Chloë Whitehorn. Chloë Whitehorn is a playwright based in Kingston, Ontario, former actor turned playwright, and as I think I mentioned at the end of last episode, a prolific playwright. So many wonderful plays that Chloë has written. I'm a fan of Chloë's. I hope that you will be too after this conversation. Here's my conversation with Chloë Whitehorn. Well, Chloë Whitehorn, thank you so much for joining me. I have been looking forward to talking to you about theater and the plays that you write. And a big part of that is because one of your plays still haunts me.
I know which one that is.
I know you know which one it is.
I think of you every time I'm in Shoppers around Christmas time.
Christmas, and you see the little chocolate
The
orange
chocolate oranges, yeah.
Your play, The Pigeon, and the mileage that I'm sure I'm not the only person who sends you a message at Christmas when they see a chocolate orange box on the shelf, traumatized from the ending of that play.
Well, I'm glad I could have an impact that was long lasting, Phil.
You certainly have. For those who are unaware, I'm not going to give away the ending of that play because should you have the opportunity to see it or read it, you absolutely should. But there's an image at the end of the play that is just somebody with a chocolate orange box, and the implications of that box and everything that's come before it are just horrific. And I remember sitting in silence after that play, clapping, but not sure, like, I don't feel good at the end of this play.
Oh, no. But I feel good every time you send me a message.
I know.
Thinking of you, opened my stocking, and my mom sent me this.
It's true. Now, that sort of brings us to one of the as a playwright, I know you've mentioned before that, like, early in your writing career, you wrote like sort of like plays about falling in love and stuff like that, and that that's something that you're really into now. You really want to talk about heavier topics and women's rights and mental health and The Pigeon is sort of, but not that. But also like dealing with darker themes. How do you judge how far to push something in when you're playing with darker themes? How do you decide where to stop?
That is a great question. I think it's probably my comfort level. I really go into writing with something that I would want to watch. I don't like being spoon-fed things, so I can't sit through that. I want to assume that the audience has the same level of intelligence and will get things. And I layer stuff, but the darkness, yeah, I don't know. I know I've written one too many plays about incest, apparently. As an only child with like a single mom, it wasn't something that I got the breadth of exactly that was. I was just like, this is dark. This is like somebody who could love you that deeply, knowing you your whole life, and that would be amazing. And well, I have kids now, and I'm like, no, that's not amazing. It's a different kind of love, different kind.
Took a while to get there.
Yeah, it did. But yeah, I've just always been drawn to the darker stuff. We had at the kitchen dining room table when we'd have dinner for a conversation, so that you aren't just a bunch of people sitting around a table eating and listening to each other chew. We had a peach jar, like a cookie jar shaped like a peach, that we would all put topics of conversation in. And my mothers were always like, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? And mine were like, what are your thoughts on abortion? Because I want to know the insides of people, and that's what's fascinating to me.
Yeah, for sure. And that, I think, is one of the things that does set your plays apart? I mean, the themes of some of your plays are quite dark. For example, The Pigeon. There's some dark stuff in that play, but your play isn't about that dark thing. It's about the people who inhabit that world. And while your plays each play might have a theme, it's not about the theme, it's about the people. And I'm curious about how you came to that in your writing. Like, have you always been more about the people, or did you start with themes and like work your way towards the people?
I was always the people, but the issues have changed that those people are dealing with. I came from an acting background. And so when I started writing, it was more about the emotions that a character could go through, or what if they were put in this situation. So it was always from the character's point of view. I never wrote from a visual standpoint of, oh, wouldn't it be cool to see this on stage? It was really, what are they feeling? And then playing with words and how different words may mean the same thing, but the ones you choose, the way they sound, have a different effect on the characters and on the audience. Playing with that became interesting to me. But yeah, no, I start writing about people and they're just dealing with things. I'm trying to think of an example. So with Blood River, which you have not seen, you should see. I want somebody else to do this so badly. I moved back to Kingston, Ontario from the States. I was living down in South Carolina for about 6 years. And when I was up visiting family, they just overturned Roe v. Wade. And I was on the train passing through towns going, oh, the real estate, what's the real estate like here? That's a cute town. How can I move back? And so when I came back, the artistic director of Theatre Kingston wanted to commission me to write a play about why I moved back to Canada. And I said, well, okay, but it can't be about a reason. It's got to be about people. And that became the play. It was about women dealing with what happens when their rights are taken away and how that affects them personally. So it's the individual stories rather than the issue that comes through. And I think that's where I keep continuing with stuff. When I did Fall After Midsummer last year, it's Titania and Oberon post Midsummer Night's Dream. Because you see Midsummer Night's Dream, and for people who don't know, Oberon, king of the fairies, Titania, his wife, and they have an argument. And to punish her, he makes her fall in love with a man with the head of a donkey, just to embarrass her. And I remember thinking, fuck, that's toxic. It was so toxic. And why is that okay? And why do we look at these people as, oh, look at this love story? So I said it post that, and it turned into a revenge play. But it's about toxic relationships. But it's about the characters.
You said something in there just right at the beginning about being an actor and then sort of becoming a writer later. What brought you to writing over acting?
I always wrote stories growing up, but I was more into the poetry because I had a problem with plot. And then acting, I was actually in Kingston. It's before I moved to Toronto the second time. And there was a one-act play festival that I'd done a show for previously. And so I signed up for a slot again and got it and didn't have a play that I wanted to do. So I figured, okay, well, I guess I have to write one. And so I wrote my first one-woman show and did that and realized then, oh, wait, I prefer the writing to the acting, I think. I love the rehearsal process. I love being an actor in that and discovering things. I'm not sure. I'd never really loved the auditioning process and performance. I loved the sound of applause, but performing itself wasn't what did it for me. It was the discovery and playing with the characters. And so I found out, well, I can do that with more than one. I can do that with a whole range of characters that I would never as an actor be cast to play, but I can get into their heads as a writer. So that's when I stopped acting and started writing.
I think nobody actually likes auditioning.
There are some people who look at it as like, well, it's a mini performance. I'm like, no, I couldn't wrap my head around it that way.
See, for many years, I don't audition much anymore, but near the end of when I was auditioning, I was like, this is like my job interview, and I might do 100 of these. This audition is just another audition. And once I started to think of that, I didn't sweat auditions anymore. But prior to that, I used to go into auditions just like this is the one, this one, like putting so much pressure on one audition, and especially considering how many auditions every actor is going to do in their life, and just reducing it to just another really kind of helped.
It's that role that you really, really want, though. And then you feel that desperation, and they can see that desperation. And having sat now on the other side of the table so many times, I mean, I know we want the actors to do well. We want them to walk in and be exactly what we're looking for. But when you're on the other side of it, that's hard to get over.
I know, but I really think that every actor should spend at least one day on the other side of the audition table, like watching auditions and like participating in those auditions. You not only learn, man, you learn that they're rooting for you, which really takes the pressure off. Because, you walk into the room, they want you to succeed. But the other thing it does is it shows you all the things that people do wrong going into an audition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But also that it's not necessarily it's not you.
Yeah.
If you don't get cast, it's not that you might have reminded the director of somebody in their life. They might have seen somebody else that they really wanted, and they can't see them paired up with you. And realizing that you might have done the best you could do, and you might have been awesome, but that's just not what they needed for that role.
100%.
Wild to see that.
Yeah, and that's part of the process that every actor should be part of. I remember doing auditions for something and having that very conversation. This person is amazing, but we already decided we're going to give this role to this person. Can we see this person with them? No.
Yeah.
It really did come down to that. And it sucks, but it's very freeing to know that it's not you.
It's not you. And now I'm not necessarily just casting. I feel casting is really important with the plays. I've had some interesting experiences with directors where they didn't necessarily see my work the same way I did, but I know if the casting is right, it'll still be okay. There was one particular play where I wrote a memory character, and the director was like, "No, it's a ghost." I'm like, "No, but okay, it should be fine." So yeah, I'm involved in the casting a lot, just because for the first time a show is done, I want it to be done right. But I've also now started writing specifically for actors that I know as well. So
how is writing for actors that you know different from writing for just like whoever the director is going to choose?
You expect them to find in casting you like, okay, I wrote this character and I've got a very set idea of who this is. And when people walk in, if they do something completely different that surprises you about the character, that is very cool. So there's something nice in not writing for a specific actor. When I did Fringe here the last 2 years, and knowing that I have actors that have signed up without seeing a single word of the script and said, yes, whatever you write, I will be in that. I love that. But then I know what the strengths are. It gives me some latitude to play with that and also challenge people. I had a show 2 years ago that I knew the actor could do it. It was the Oberon. It was completely this, alpha asshole, basically. And that is not who the actor is. He's the sweetest guy, but I was also directing that one. So knowing he could do it and pushing him and saying, you walk into this room, this is your room, you own it, don't move around, don't fidget. And watching him challenge himself to get there was fun as well. What's different about writing for, I don't know. I can see other people in the role. Sometimes when I'm writing it for them, I have to forget who they are as a person too, to just write it. But being able to hear their voices sometimes helps as well.
Do you find that because you know people, you kind of get a sense of what their wheelhouse is and like, oh, they will be really good at this. Like this is like, I'm writing this and I can hear how they're going to do that speech.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Flip side of that is sometimes when you want them to do it differently than how their natural instinct is. I worked with the same actress for the past 2 shows. And she was getting into a rhythm with the monologues. And I said, no, that you're doing that last character. This is a different character. And she said, yes, but it's the same playwright. you write the same way. I'm like, there's different punctuation. Follow the punctuation. You'll get there. It's fine. But yeah, knowing that I can give her specifically really long poetic verses and she will make them sound natural. That's amazing. I like that. But yeah, I like working with new people as well. So
yeah,
you know what it is like though, if you like were in a show and you've worked with everybody else before and then there's that one person that's new and you've never worked with them and then they disappoint you. That's hard.
Listen, it's hard, and you can understand why people form performing cliques, right?
Troops.
Once you have like a group of people that you click with, that you can work with, like you don't really want to jeopardize that by bringing in people you don't know if the group works together and everybody is going to do what they need to do. The problem is when that kind of thing just becomes like its own bubble.
Stale.
Yeah.
Yeah, and introducing new energy into it is always good. And you learn new things about things and you'll hear things differently and play differently. And that's good. Yeah.
It's always so fraught. I remember doing a show with Keystone Theater years ago. We were doing plays and style of silent film. We were doing our play, The Last Man on Earth, which we eventually toured. But the initial production had one actor who helped create one of the roles. And they were unavailable when we went to do it for Fringe. So now we had to bring in somebody brand new to reinvent the role for themselves. And it was like kind of a bit of a, what do we do here? What do we do with this new energy and how is that going to work? And it ended up being great. But again, going into it, there's all the nerves of like, what is this new energy going to do to this show?
You don't want to lose what you've created, but at the same time, all the performances then have to adapt, right?
Yeah.
That's happened when we've lost an actor in a show, like partway through rehearsals for some reason or another, and you bring in somebody different, and they do everything differently, and then everybody is adapting to, because you can't just play it the same way.
No. Yeah. You mentioned about moving from the States to Kingston to being in Kingston and Toronto and all that sort of thing. You were born in California.
I was.
I'm curious how you found your way to Canada and what that journey was to take you from there to here, to Kingston, to Toronto, back to the States, and then back again.
When I moved from Berkeley, California to Winnipeg, Manitoba.
That's a change.
Yeah. I volunteered to shovel snow because I thought it would be light and fluffy. Yeah, I had no say in that. I was entirely my mom. She got married, so we moved to Winnipeg, and then I basically became Canadian, like through and through. And being up here, I remember thinking about this recently too. That being up here, it's easy to think, oh, the U.S. and Canada is very similar. It's the same sort of thing, but then. When I went back, I moved back down in 2016 because my husband got a job down there. And I moved from Toronto, downtown Toronto, to Rock Hill, South Carolina, which the entire state of South Carolina has half the population of Toronto, just to start with. And then I'm in like one of those towns, does really cute Christmasville thing downtown where they block off their two downtown streets and fill it with Christmassy things in the South where there's no snow and it's not cold. So, I mean, there's cute aspects to that, but the culture shock of, no, the South isn't portrayed like that in movies and TVs just as exaggeration. That is actually what people are like. And I realized very easily that I was in Toronto. I was in this little bubble. I thought, I'm not naive, I'm worldly, whatever, but I was in my little artist-filled bubble of other lefty, artsy people, and then plopped down into, suburban small town, the South. And it was a culture shock on so many levels. And that was before the election in 2016. So
having come from California to Winnipeg, embracing Canadianness and then going back to the States for a while, you might be well suited to, I'm not going to ask you what it means to be Canadian, because that is the unanswerable question that everyone in Canada always wants an answer to that nobody can find the answer to. But in terms of like the difference
Mhm.
between like being American and Canadian, do you have a sense of, aside from like Tim Hortons and coffee and all that, or and hockey and all that bullshit, do you have a sense of what the difference is?
I think in Canada, we really like to let people be who they are. You come from wherever you come from, and you bring that culture and your beliefs and everything to life here, and it just sort of adds to it. Whereas in the States, you're expected to sort of become like the Borg. I don't know. Like you are one of a number, and you go along with the masses and assimilate, I guess. Yeah, there is something to be said for. So when we decided to move back, I have people who are like, "Oh, you should have maybe stayed down there and like protested and fought the system. And how are you supposed to make change from like how does leaving help?" And I mean, that is an option. You can do that, but also I have kids, and at a certain age, the parents are not the influence that they listen to anymore. I've still got a lot of influence because they're only 9 and 11, but the people around them throughout the day at school, their classmates, their friends, that becomes more of their influencing factor. And I prefer my kids to grow up in an environment where I am viewed as a person who has just as many rights as anybody else, and you know, not less rights than that of a corpse. So that was important to me.
So it wasn't a difficult choice for you coming back?
Not at all. No, we basically said, we're moving back, and if you need to find a new job, then you need to find a new job. I can write anywhere, but I wanted to be here. So yeah, we actually did look at like all across Canada. We had real estate agents looking in every single province, basically. I put a bid in on a house in New Brunswick. I know nobody in New Brunswick, but I was that much. We are going back to Canada. So
Do you remember where the house in New Brunswick was?
it was down by the water. It's not narrow it down.
That doesn't narrow it down at all.
No, but it was this gorgeous house that like had been wildly redone by an interior decorator in a very Victorian maximalist style, which is my style. And they weren't painting everything beige to sell the house. I wouldn't have had to do anything to it. As opposed to, I moved to a suburban house here in Kingston where everything was beige, and I did have to paint everything. Turns out the electricity would have been like a huge bill, though. I remember looking at that after.
I'm pretty sure, like, if you're not in a city, it can really get pretty expensive.
Huge. Yeah.
On the topic of assimilation and the difference, that difference, I've heard recently people say this on, like, occasionally I'll be like on Reddit and somebody be like, I've moved to Canada, blah, 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 blah. And every response is, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Canada. And my favorite, Canadians are born all over the world. It just takes some of them a while to come home.
Oh, that's really good. I really like that.
And I think I do think that is one of the things that I agree. That's a major part of Canada is welcoming the difference in all the cultures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's get back to writing. Let's get back to writing, because I don't want to think about America strangely for.
No, I know. It's so hard these days.
In terms of your writing, I was looking at your New Play Exchange page, and there's a lot of plays there. And I was looking at your website. There's a lot of plays there. You are, I would dare to use the word, a prolific writer. Do you have a method, or is it just focus?
Oh, it's not even that. Oh my God. I wish I had a method. I wish I had focus. I do really well with deadlines, which is why I actually put in for the Fringe the last 2 years, because I had a whole year where I just didn't write anything. And I thought, well, if I get a spot in the Fringe, then I have to write something. So that is exactly what happened. Yeah, no, I do really well with deadlines. I don't outline. I don't plan. I sort of am more of a jigsaw puzzle writer, where I write little bits and pieces of things and then puzzle them all together at the end and realize that my unconscious nicely put in this detail over here that links up with that detail over there. And I meant to do that the whole time. Aren't I smart? But deadlines. That's the answer.
Deadlines are hugely helpful. I wrote my solo play for 8 years before I was like, I'm going to write this thing forever if I don't if I don't have a deadline, if I don't have a fringe festival or something, I will write this play forever.
Well, because I think we're slight perfectionists in that we want everything to be as good as it can be. But like you could rework something forever if you don't have to let it go at any point.
Yeah. I mean, every time I go back to a play, there's, I want to add this. I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this. And it is really easy to do, to like every time I revisit something to be like, I'm just going to do a bit more.
But when you have a like tight deadline, you're like, no, it's right out of my head, onto the page, done. And then at a reading, you could be like, oh, let's change this a little bit, or throughout rehearsal. But mostly when I write, I don't do, it's all one file too. I can't even, every time I start a new project, I'm like, how did I do this last time? I can't go back and see like phases of it. It's just one big file and I struggle all over again.
I find it interesting because when I'm writing, I never write, everything is written in its own way. Like, I don't know how I'm going to write the next play. I only know how I'm writing this one or how I wrote the one before. And none of the things I did on the last one or on this one may work on the next one.
Exactly.
It's constant discovery. And sometimes when I'm smart, I remember to make copies of old versions, but
that is smart. I wish I did that. Because then you can see the progress.
Yeah.
And that gives you hope for the new one that you're working on. You're like, oh no, I've been here before.
You can go back to the very first version and say, see, this started like this and now it's good.
Yeah. It became something. So this thing I'm working on now will become something. I'm in that stage right now with what I'm writing. I promised it to a theater for February. So they obviously need to read it before they announce their season. And I've got a reading set up for the end of the month because I needed that deadline. Well, I have to have something for people to read. So I must get it done. But I'm in the but why stage. This is happening and I like what they're saying. But why? Why is it important? And my friend reminded me, well, that's exactly what it was like with the last play.
Right.
And the one before that. Like, oh, okay.
Man, you need people around you to remind you of that sometimes. You just need somebody to go like, this is part of the process.
Yeah.
Now that play
is fun though.
Is that Admit too?
It is. I had this idea of a dilapidated old circus that 10 years ago you would have described it as having seen better days, like the tent, the costumes, the people. And I randomly started with a circus. That's my idea for this. And I was like, it's a murder mystery. But why? What makes it important? Why what's it going to change about the world? Because that's new for me in the last bunch of years, that I really like writing things that I've always liked writing things that make people think. I don't care if people like it so much as they leave talking about it. But if it can also change somebody's mind or improve the world, because life is, art is a reflection of life, but life is a reflection of the art as well. So if we're making things that help people move forward or become better, then I feel like as an artist, I'm not just creating entertainment. I'm also, contributing to the world, contributing to society somehow.
I sometimes think that as we are writing, if we allow the characters to be uncensored, they're going to say something, and then you're going to discover, oh, that's what this person's about. Like if we just let them go.
It's true. I discovered my aerialist doesn't have a startle response. And I looked that up. I'm like, what does that mean? Oh, it means she could be a psychopath. Oh, okay. Interesting. I didn't realize that about her. So
now you mentioned that you started with the idea of the circus. You had an image of it. You write about people, but do the plays often start with like an image or an idea, and the people grow out of that, or how do they form, or is it different all the time?
It's different each time. I know with Divine Rex, I started with this scene of the two of them wrapped in a sheet of just this like this moment of after. And that was it's my Oedipus Rex adaptation that I set in a high school. So it's the high school student and his teacher who actually, Oedipus follows Oedipus. So if you know Oedipus, you know who she actually is. And it was a couple lines that scene actually repeats 3 times in the play with different meaning each time, exactly the same words, but different meaning based on what you've seen of the rest of what's going on. So with that, it was that. With Madness Lies, I wanted to write about Hamlet. Hamlet is the ultimate revenge story. But when you remember Ophelia, you think, what do you remember about her? She went crazy. Well, they have the same story. Their fathers were both murdered. They both sort of go a little unhinged, and then they both die. But because he's a man, it's a revenge story. So I was like, well, what if Hamlet was a woman? And that led me to the whole mental health crisis and how women are historically medicated or institutionalized to deal with their trauma, and said, oh, I found a fun fact. It's fun when society brings things to you, right? When you're writing things, you're like, oh, this is what I'm writing about. That's convenient. Somebody did a study and they handed the same files to doctors, that they had all the same symptoms. They presented exactly the same. One was a woman, one was a man, that sort of thing. And the women were predominantly given a borderline personality disorder diagnosis. The men were diagnosed with PTSD. But exactly the same thing. It's just the gender was different. And that just spiraled into, oh, how was it dealt with in Victorian times, and how are we still dealing with it? We're not dealing with the actual trauma. We're dealing with the symptoms. And sorry, I have gone off on a complete tangent.
No. I mean, listen, I think that is one of the things that writers do, because we're ingesting so many facts. My girlfriend is always remarking, I will say, oh, did you know this? We talk about something and I'll be like, here's a fact about that. And I will say, so how do you know all of this? I was like, I was in a play, or I was writing a play, or I was thinking about a play, and I was reading this and that, you pack so many random things into your brain.
And they all come out at different times. And you might be asked to write something about one thing, and that's not what it turns into.
Yeah.
I had Love Virtually back at the Toronto Fringe. I think it was 2011, because it was pre-kids. I had been asked to write a play about online dating. And I had meetings with the producer, and I kept bringing her pages. And it was about, this barista serving this woman biscotti at the coffee shop. And it was their building relationship and tension. And she's like, but where's the online dating? I said, oh, I'll get there. I was fascinated by this budding romance that was never going to become anything. And that was the basis of that play, even though it was eventually about online dating. But
how did you massage that back to online dating?
Well, see, he died. And so this was in combination with a producer who wanted to do something with music as well. So she was a musician, and her producer, the character's producer, was trying to coax her back into working again. And maybe she just needed to get over this guy and date other people. And hence the online dating happened. But
got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting the way that plays sometimes want to go.
Not the way we always expect.
No. And sometimes you can let them go, and sometimes you have to try to, because you've been
pull them back.
You have to pull them back to where they're expected to go. If you're commissioned to write a thing, you have to deliver that thing.
Yeah. Or you just have to change their mind about what it is they wanted in the first.
You're living in Kingston right now. It's not your first time living in Kingston.
It keeps pulling me back.
It does keep pulling you back. The home of the tragically hip will do that to people.
Yeah.
You've lived in big cities, in small towns in the States, and Kingston, which is a city. I don't think it's not a smaller city. It's a city. What do you like about Kingston and its theater scene?
Oh, I love the theater scene here. It's everybody knows everyone. And I know you can say that in Toronto because there's all the 6 degrees of separation. Everybody knows somebody who knows somebody. But literally, you know everybody in the theater scene here. You've either worked with them or auditioned with them or been at a party with them or something. When I moved back here, I thought, oh, how do I get reintroduced to the theater community. And I actually acted in I was on stage again for the first time in like 14 years, just because it was a small piece in a huge ensemble piece. I thought I'll be reintroduced to everybody. And half of the people here were still the people that I knew from before. There were new people that were great. There were people from Toronto that I know when I was in Toronto that have since moved to Kingston. So it's a little petri dish of all of the theater scenes everywhere, but in smaller form.
Do you find that the smaller form gives you more freedom as far as like creating plays, or how is, aside from like the number of people and the number of theater companies, how does theater in Kingston differ from, say, theater in Toronto?
I mean, I have the freedom to write for theaters here as well as elsewhere. So there's, I can write here and it can go anywhere, but there's more encouragement and support here. I know the reviewers, because there's a few now, they're more familiar with my work. It was so cool that a couple of reviews came out this summer, and it was like, in typical Whitehorn fashion. Like, what? That's a thing? Oh, that's wild. But because they had seen enough of my stuff that they could, sorry, something just turned on. Okay. That they could remark on stuff or know that it's layered, and if you don't get it right away, you just have to think. One of the reviewers, love her, who now writes for Intermission magazine, she was like, I saw the play and I knew I have to like dissect each line 2 or 3 times to get through it, like an onion. There's layers, and to get it that way, which was that part's nice. Also, having theaters that know me and want to do my work is also nice. It's that elusive second production that is hard to get anywhere else. And I think theater in Toronto it's huge, and you make your connections, but there's still very limited options for actually getting your work put on that is not you.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not huge and doing, well, I don't think anybody in Toronto is writing the Mervis shows, but the littler theaters, it's still a lot of self-production.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I can say, hey, I have this play. Or they can say, hey, Chloe, I have a spot in my season. I want something. Can you write me something? And that has been really nice and supportive. It's made me write more, I think.
Well, I mean, if you have the opportunity to have stuff performed, like, it's going to encourage you to write more. You said something about the elusive second production. And I don't think that is unique to Kingston, because I really think that we have a problem in Canada,
in theater,
generally in Canadian theater, about getting a show a second production. It's like, in the States, a show will be a hit, like a straight play will be a hit somewhere, and other theaters will want to do it. Shows from the UK will get done in North America. But in Canada, we do a show once, and then we kind of throw it on the pile of Canadian plays and forget about it. And it's one of the things that I think prevents our theater from being great and sort of exploding, because nobody in Canada wants to do a show that's not a premiere.
Yeah, no, they all want to have been their hand on it to begin with. They want to say, we were part of creating this, which is great. And we are very good at supporting first productions of things and generating work. There's a word for that, and it's escaped me. But yeah, we're good at pushing for that first thing and supporting that. But once it's written, it's done.
Yeah.
And unless you can get it put up somewhere else. I know I've got a few things that have gone to the States and had productions there, which is nice, because then I'm hoping, well, if it gets done a couple times there, then maybe in Canada they might look back and go, oh, this thing, maybe we'll try that again.
There have been a couple of times when Kim's Convenience has been done by a company that's not Soul Pepper or something like that after the initial production in Fringe. Or recently, Michael Ross Albert's play The Huns was done from Fringe 2019, I think, was done at the Halifax Fringe this past year. But those are both extremely rare things where somebody else that's not the original producer did the play. And I don't know the why of it. It's one of the things that I would love to delve into to figure out like why and how can we fix it. But
I have a thought. I think it might be because we tend to write, I'm generalizing here, but darker, more serious work. And that in itself is hard to get put up because mass audiences prefer musicals and comedies. I should actually ask, Sophia Fabule is in Kingston as well, and she wrote a farce. I've forgotten what it's called, but it takes place in a funeral home, and it is hysterical. And I'm not a comedy person. I like my dark, tragic plays, but I saw it done at the Thousand Islands Playhouse, and I've also seen that it is at several other theaters across Canada, and it's been very successful. So I should ask her what her secret is.
I do think the idea of like doing plays that are darker or more serious, that seems to be what a lot of the theaters that are doing like the development work, like Tarragon Factory, Passe Muraille, and some of the other theaters in Canada are doing. And that seems to be what they're seeking grants for. I've complained forever the fact that like in amongst all of those serious plays, nobody's programming like a popcorn play, like a farce, just to like be like, hey, we could do both. You can have a good time and then come back and see a serious thing, Well,
we like to spill our guts out on stage as comedians, I think. And that is what gets the funding to dissect the human experience. And that's usually darker, not necessarily straight comedic. So
I know. It's, but I do think that sometimes like we could do that with comedy as well. But
for sure. And I think it's harder with comedy, and you feel it more when you laugh at something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's not the go-to for people to think, hey, let's do this. Let's entertain through the dark winters.
I mean, we should. I mean, we have cold winters, as you learned in your first winter here in Canada when you thought that you wanted to shovel the snow. It's not like that. But I think it's it's the same reason why our publishing industry doesn't touch genre. Like there's no sci-fi publishers, there's no fantasy publishers.
All literary fiction.
It's all literary, and we just don't do that here, which I think is to the detriment of many different forms of art.
I've actually started trying to write novels. I started during the pandemic when all the theaters closed. And I thought, oh, well, crap. Maybe I need a different creative outlet. It's such a different medium. I'm used to writing just the dialogue and minimal stage directions because I feel like, all theater artists bring their own talent and it's a collaborative effort. So here's your dialogue, but you guys figure out the rest of it. And when you're writing a book, it's, she sits on the bench under a tree and the light from the tree. You have to describe the light and the bench and how she's sitting and what she's thinking. And that's all the stuff that I'm not used to writing. So it's been a struggle.
It is a struggle. It's all of that like, I would have an actor come up with these, like how is she, like what's her inner thoughts and things like that. That's the actor's job. I write.
Yeah, exactly. I'm stepping on people's toes if I should.
Yeah. It's definitely a different experience to try to write all of that. I've tried it and I run into the exact same thing where I'm like, I need to describe more. God, how much do I need to describe? Like everything.
And then you go down like a Google pathway of, well, okay, I need a word that does this. Oh, what's that mean? And then, oh, interesting. And then you've done all this research and you're still like 50 words in.
Yeah.
As opposed to, yeah.
And I find it, I write, like as I'm writing prose for like a short story or something like that, it takes me longer than writing a play.
Yeah. It's because we're used to dialogue. We talk to people every day.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily narrate our inner thoughts. Well, I mean, not all of us anyway.
Now we're just sort of like starting to draw to a close here, and you've done a show at the Frames this past summer in Kingston. You have the Fall After Midnight coming up in Merrick.
Yeah, we took the Fall After Midsummer after the Fringe. We put it in the One Act Play Festival here. And it won Best Production. So now it's going on to the Eastern Ontario Drama League in Merrickville. I have a show at NIF, at the New Ideas Festival Alumni in November as well. It's actually a comedic sort of fluffy light piece. It's not dark in terms. Just takes place during a hurricane. It's called Hurricane Tales. It's in the last week of the festival. And I just today found out that there's a theater company down in Maryland that is going to do Dressing Amelia.
Nice.
So hey, it's getting a second production.
There you go. But
Yeah.
sadly, we couldn't do it in Canada.
Nope. Had to be down near Washington, D.C. My husband said, "Oh, is that going to get you travel banned?" I said, "No, it's Dressing Amelia. It's one of the lighter. Well, it's not light. It's about bipolar parents, whatever. But yeah, it's not as political, so I should be okay."
You mentioned the work that you're currently working on, and the themes of that, and you're trying to work towards the February production. As you're working through it, what is your favorite thing currently about it?
Oh, I get to write another character that uses vocabulary in a different way than I do. I lose words all the time when I'm talking. I'll know exactly what I want to say. I know there's a word for it. I generally know what letter it starts with, but it's completely escaped my mind. And there is a word for that as well. I don't remember what it is. Having that tip of the tongue syndrome. But this character uses fugacious. I didn't know the word fugacious. And it came out of his mouth. And I thought, well, that's something. It's memorable, like some sort of core memory. It's interesting, right? And it's forgettable, something that's unforgettable, as opposed to words. So just playing with the language, I guess, is what I really enjoy. Yeah. But while I wonder about the why of the play, I keep coming up with other things. I have a deep love for Daniel McIver. He is actually, one of his plays is what got me into theater. I was a film major at Queen's, and I saw Never Swim Alone. It was See Bob Run. And I believed every single second of that performance. It was just one of those benches ripped out from a car on an empty stage that was actually a classroom, not even a theater. And I bought into every second. And that's when I realized that theater could be real. And that was my thing. So there's a Never Swim Alone take that I want to do that is women, and about how my generation of women sort of were conditioned to be competitive with one another, as opposed to now the younger generation is all supportive of each other, and that's fabulous. But we still have these tendrils of competitiveness stuck to us from our upbringing. So my mind wanders to that, and I'm like, no, admit to, write that one, not this other one.
That, for me as a writer, has been one of my biggest challenges in the entire history of writing, because when the play I'm writing gets hard, I'm bombarded with new ideas.
Yeah.
They'll suddenly think, oh, that's easier to write than this one. And for the longest time, I would go to that one. I'd start writing that one, leaving the old one behind. And then the same thing would happen. And so more ideas. And then now I make an agreement that while I'm writing something, if I get those new ideas, I just put them in a folder.
Mm-hmm.
And I can come back later and see if it's still a good idea, but I'm only allowed to write it down. And that's all I can do.
You have to work on the thing you're working on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard though.
So hard. And Danny McIver, I saw a production of See Bob Run in a warehouse in Kitchener many years ago. And you're right. It is a very immediate and very spellbinding play. Danny McIver is the reason why I ever wanted to write a solo play.
See, look at this. He's birthed so many authors and writers.
100%. It was Wild Abandoned, but also House. That was like just those as solo plays made me want to write solo plays. And that's before I ever saw one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, because they jump off the page too. It's not just because it is one person talking, you can totally visualize it entirely. You don't necessarily need to see it. Whereas, other plays, you can read it. It doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I think sometimes, they did this with Harry Potter and the Golden whatever, the play. And when that came out, Indigo was advertising it like it's a new novel without taking into account that people are going to purchase this hardcover, find out it's a play, and realize that reading a play is entirely different than reading a novel and is an entirely different skill set.
Yeah, because it's lacking all those descriptive
All those
bits about how
descriptive
she's
bits that
sitting
were-
on
yeah.
the bench with the tree.
Yeah. Chloë, it is a pleasure to talk to you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I've wanted to talk to you on the podcast for a very long time. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Stageworthy. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Before we get to next week's guest, let's get a little housekeeping out of the way. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you hit the like button, make sure that you subscribe and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever I release a new episode. If you're listening to the audio version, make sure that you're subscribed. Just go into your favorite podcast app, search for Stageworthy, and hit the subscribe or follow button. Also, if you happen to be on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, if you wanted to leave a rating or review, that would really help. Those kinds of things really do help the algorithm and push the podcast higher up for more people to find. Also, I do want to take a second to talk about my Patreon, because the patrons who back me on Patreon are the reason that I am able to make this podcast. It does cost money to do this, and so the fact that there are some people who believe in the podcast and have wanted to back it means so much, and they are entirely the reason that I'm able to do the show. We're just covering the costs. I'm giving you this podcast for free, but it does cost money to make it. I have to pay for editing software. I have to pay for hosting both website and for the audio files. I'm also paying for image software to create the images that I create each week, as well as a whole lot of other things that just need to be covered. And I'm not even paying for my time for making this podcast, whether it's searching out guests or doing the interviews or editing or anything else that I do related to the podcast. We're just covering those costs. So if you want to help me make this podcast, go to patreon.com/stageworthy and become a patron. All of the patron levels are really affordable and in Canadian dollars. So please become a backer. People who become patrons get early access to episodes and get to participate in conversations about the podcast. So I hope that if you want to help me make this show, become a patron. Go to patreon.com/stageworthy and become a patron. I would be forever grateful. Next week, we're going to be talking to Michael Cross. Michael is a playwright and director, as well as one of Canada's busiest directors of magic and illusion. And you can hear about those by tuning in next week when you can hear me talk to Michael Cross.